put God everything you do.
Have you ever found yourself praying, doing everything you're supposed to, but still feeling empty inside? You do everything right. You say the words, you shout, you search with all your heart, and yet the peace and answers you long for seem so far away. The silence is deafening. You feel as if your prayers are lost in the void. Why does this happen? You may ask yourself, why does God seem so distant when I need Him most? In reality, this feeling is not unique to you. Many people around the world experience it. Despite different lifestyles, we all carry the same burdens, the same longings for connection. It's easy to think there's something wrong with you when this emptiness persists. But the reality is that it's part of the human condition. You're not alone in this. The problem isn't that God doesn't listen to your prayers. It's often that we're so overwhelmed by life, the noise, the rush, the distractions, that we leave no room for God to speak to us. In a world where we're constantly bombarded with information, technology, and responsibilities, it's hard to hear God's still, small voice. We've become so accustomed to noise that we've forgotten what silence is. And in that silence, God calls you. Think about your life. From the hustle and bustle of work in the big capital cities, to suburban life or busy streets in quiet rural areas, there's a rhythm, a noise, all around you. And yet, in the midst of that noise, God calls us to slow down, to reset. And maybe, just maybe, it's this constant running that keeps us from experiencing the fullness of His presence. Remember the verse in Matthew 11:28-30. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble of heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. But here's the question. How often do we really let go of the weight we carry? How often do we let go of our control, our fears, our anxieties, and allow God to give us the rest He promises? It's easy to say the prayers, but to really let go and know God's rest, we need a reset, a change in the way we approach our spiritual life. Look at the world around you. The constant flow of social media, the pressure to be constantly connected, and the stress of keeping up with the times. It's a noisy world. And we've adapted to it, to the point where we've forgotten how to find peace. That's why many of us still feel empty, even after praying. We may pray with our mouths, but our hearts are still full of distractions and noise. Jesus calls us to rest. But rest doesn't just mean lying down. It means realigning our hearts and minds. It means letting go of everything that fills us to give God the space He needs to speak. Think of a crowded room full of people shouting at each other. Can you hear the soft voice of your friend in the corner? Of course you can't. The same goes for your spiritual life. If your mind and heart are filled with the noise of life, there's no space for God's voice to break through. In 1 Kings 19, we see a powerful example of this principle in the life of Elijah. After a stunning victory over the prophets of Baal, Elijah fled, fearing for his life. He found himself in a cave, overwhelmed and exhausted. God did not manifest Himself through storm, earthquake, or fire. Instead, He spoke in a soft whisper, in a small, quiet voice. God often manifests Himself in quiet moments, when we are still, when we have created the space to hear Him. Let's be honest. For many people, prayer has become a habit without heart. We've been taught to pray before meals, before bed, during crisis, and even when we're grateful. But how often do we stop to consider how we're praying or who we're becoming in the process? Prayer is not just a spiritual activity, it's a relationship. And like any relationship, if it becomes one-sided, mechanical, or rushed, it loses power. You can say all the right words, repeat every verse you know, but if your heart is closed, numb, or distracted, it's like talking to someone through a wall. The words are there, but the connection is not. Maybe that's why you're here. You didn't come looking for another motivational video. You're not searching for another sermon or a perfect life hack. You came because you feel something missing. And deep down, you hope there's more than this. Here's the good news. There is more. But to get to it, you'll need to stop running. Not just physically, but spiritually, emotionally, mentally. You'll need to quiet the voices around you and even the ones inside you. That's where the reset begins. Not in doing more, but in becoming less, so God can become more in you. John the Baptist said in John 3:30, "He must increase, but I must decrease." That's not just theology, it's a way of life. It's the daily choice to let go of pride, performance, control, and the fear of the unknown, so that God can reshape us into something deeper, freer, and more whole. This process isn't easy. It will feel uncomfortable. You may feel like things are falling apart before they get better. But what if they're not falling apart? What if God is simply rearranging the pieces to build something stronger? If you feel empty, it may not be because God isn't listening to you, but because we haven't made room for His voice to express itself in our lives. The reset begins when you decide to eliminate distractions and allow God to work in your heart. You may be overwhelmed by the pace of life. Whether you're in New York, Nova Scotia, or the busy streets of London, but God wants to meet you where you are. Psalm 46:10 reminds us, "Be still and know that I am God." This stillness isn't about silence for the sake of silence. It's about creating space for God to move. It's about surrendering the noise and opening your heart to the peace only He can provide. This is your spiritual reset. The process of resetting begins with an honest look at what's filling your heart and mind. What are the things that have crowded out God's voice? What are the fears, the distractions, the past hurts that keep you from truly hearing Him? It's time to declutter your spiritual life and create room for the Spirit of God to fill you in ways you've never experienced before. One of the most powerful examples of spiritual reset in the Bible comes from the story of Elijah. In 1 Kings 19, Elijah had just faced the prophets of Baal in a dramatic showdown, calling down fire from heaven. But despite his victory, he was overwhelmed with fear and despair. He fled into the wilderness, and there he encountered God, not in the wind, the earthquake, or the fire, but in a still, small voice. This moment of encounter changed Elijah's life. God didn't speak to Elijah in the chaos of the storm. He spoke in the stillness, and in that moment, Elijah was reset. His mind and heart were cleared of the distractions and fears that had filled him. He was able to hear God clearly once again, and he was given new strength and purpose for the journey ahead. This is the kind of spiritual reset that God is offering you today. It's not about trying harder, doing more, or praying louder. It's about quieting the noise in your life, about creating space for God to fill you with His presence, His peace, and His purpose. When we reset, we allow God to speak to us in ways we never imagined. And that's when the true transformation happens. Perhaps you've been praying for breakthrough, for healing, or for guidance. Maybe you've been asking God to speak to you, to show you His will for your life. But have you given yourself the space to hear Him? Have you created room in your life for Him to move? As we begin this spiritual reset together, I encourage you to take some time each day to simply be still. In Psalm 46:10, God says, "Be still and know that I am God." This stillness is not about silence for the sake of silence. It's about opening your heart and mind to God, allowing Him to fill the empty spaces. It's about surrendering the noise, the distractions, and the worries, and making room for His presence to wash over you. This is the reset that begins today. When you take the time to truly listen, when you allow God to reset your soul, you will begin to experience the peace, clarity, and guidance you've been seeking. Your prayers will no longer feel empty, but will become a deep conversation with a loving Father who is waiting to speak into your life. I know this journey isn't always easy, but trust me when I say that God has something incredible for you. He wants to bring you into a deeper, more intimate relationship with Him. But first, we must make room. We must clear the clutter, let go of the distractions, and create the space for God to move. This is the spiritual reset that we need, so that we can hear His voice, so that we can experience His presence in ways that transform us from the inside out. God doesn't waste silence. He uses it. Sometimes He removes the noise so we can hear Him again. Sometimes He lets us feel the emptiness so we finally stop trying to fill it ourselves. Sometimes He pauses our momentum so we can walk with Him at a different pace, a healing pace. And when we do, when we slow down, listen, release, and let the Spirit breathe new life into our worn-out bones, that's when transformation begins. That's when the soul shift happens. So wherever you are, whether you're in a busy city flat or alone in a quiet apartment, driving on a rainy road or sitting in a Sunday service where you feel invisible, know this: you are not forgotten. You are not invisible. You are not broken. You are shifting. Let go of the idea that God only shows up in power and noise. He's often waiting in the stillness, not to punish you, but to reset you, to realign you with what truly matters: His presence, His peace, and His purpose. This is your invitation. This is your reset. This is your soul shift. Are you ready to begin? To reset, to release, and to realign with the light? Your journey starts now. Welcome to the Soul Shift.